this young man has is his vulgar mouth, with which he is constantly battering everyone. But his belligerent speech is enough to earn him a night in the shelter. The youth is soon taken back to the cell block. He will find his accommodations just 4 walls and a concrete floor with a drain in the middle. Even now, he keeps up his steady stream of demands and curses. He never acknowledges the reality of his situation. With the slamming of the metal door, he is finally inside. Arriving at the scene, the police are met by a citizen who quickly points the way to the tower that the boys have climbed. Much of the police work in Finland is just enforcing basic city ordinances. Very little actual crime occurs. Weekend alcohol abuse and the petty theft of cell phones in the city's urban center constitutes the bulk of the police calls. The boys are easily found and told to come down from the tower. When asked what they're doing on the tower, the boys didn't have an answer. They just climbed it because they could. The young men are polite and quickly comply to the officer's request to come down off of the tower. The officer checks for other young climbers. Although well-armed and thoroughly trained in handling violent confrontations, most Finnish officers go their entire career without ever drawing their gun or engaging in a violent incident. The boys will not be arrested, but they will be given a ticket and they will have to pay a fine for trespassing. No harm was done here tonight. Boys, after all, will be boys. Paris, France. Acting on a call of a suspicious abandoned car, the police roll as backup to the bomb squad. Although Finland has very little terrorist activity, as with all modern nations, it has learned to be very suspicious of abandoned cars. In modern times, abandoned cars have too often been home to bombs. The officers today are taking no chances. The bomb squad has arrived with the bomb dog. This dog is one of the canine corps that has been specially trained to sniff out explosives. Other dogs in the corps specialize in detecting drugs, and still others in tracking and guarding. Hundreds of hours of training go into each dog's specialty. The dogs trained to hunt out explosives would ignore the scent of anything else. For example, a dog trained as an explosive specialist would ignore the scent of drugs. As the dog goes over the car, it is apparent that nothing has caught his interest. Any whiff of explosives would have immediately gotten a strong reaction from the dog. Confident that all is safe, the officers approach the car and give it a visual search. Although car theft is not as big a problem in Finland as it is in many other countries in Europe, it is a factor of urban life. Over 6,500 cars are reported stolen annually in Finland. This car cannot be left to remain in the parking lot. It will have to be towed to the police impound and the owner notified. A tow truck is called to remove this vehicle. It is most likely that this car has been stolen and abandoned. The majority of abandoned cars are in fact stolen. Later it was found that the car was indeed stolen and left in the parking lot. Fortunately today, the bomb scare was just a false alarm. Coming up, the Finnish people are law-abiding and very quick to call the police over any problem. The police response time in most of Finland is less than 3 minutes. The officers find a very hostile young man. Alcohol use is suspected at the root of his hostility. Most police calls in Finland involve the use of alcohol. People under the influence are often disruptive, hostile, and sometimes violent. The young man protests that he wasn't doing anything. The restaurant owner is definite, however, that the young man was in fact causing a disturbance. Public disturbances are not tolerated by the order-loving Finns. These 2 young people will not be arrested, but they will be sent on their way with a warning. A great percentage of all police work is like the work tonight, just preserving the peace. Coming up, With alcohol abuse being the #1 cause of police calls in Finland, transporting drunks to the shelter takes up a large portion of each patrolman's shift. Recently, police have lobbied to have social workers or paramedics take over some of the duties of transporting drunks. The officers feel that much of this work is pure caretaking and not police work. So far, these efforts have not succeeded, and the police still have the sole responsibility for transporting drunks to the shelter. Many people under the influence of alcohol injure themselves. They fall down, they get in fights, they are found unconscious on the street. If a drunk is injured, he is first brought to the hospital for treatment. After medical treatment, the person is then transported to the drunk shelter by the police. This man has suffered a severe fall that has caused a head injury. One unit of the police brought this man into the hospital for treatment, and now another unit is called to take him to the shelter. The man is still very drunk. 5 hours at the hospital has done little to sober him up. He cannot walk on his own. It is hard to tell if his unsteadiness is a result of his head injury or his level of intoxication. It is because of this type of rampant alcohol abuse that Finland instituted strict control over the sale of liquor. No liquor can be sold from mid-afternoon on Friday until Monday morning. Public pressure has resulted in the government recently experimenting with allowing some stores to have longer hours on the weekend. The authorities plan to carefully monitor this experiment to see if alcohol abuse rises significantly in the areas where the liquor stores enjoy longer weekend hours. Despite a history of legally dry weekends, however, the drunk shelters run to overflow capacity every weekend. The Finns seem to buy the liquor during the week and save it for a weekend indulgence. This man has removed all of the bandages. His head wound is exposed. It is very difficult to get drunks to leave their medical dressing alone. They will not be redone. He will be placed in the shelter as he is. If he still needs treatment when the alcohol wears off, he will be taken back to the hospital. The man is guided to the shelter cell by 2 officers wearing protective gloves. Everyone in the shelter wears gloves when handling either the drunks or their belongings. Over 20,000 men a year pass through these shelter doors, with less than half of that many women. Several thousand juveniles are also processed each year, but minor children found drunk are brought home to their parents. Unfortunately, drunk children are a reality in Finland. Recently, grade schools have been the target of intensive anti-alcohol campaigns. Authorities report that there has been a decline in the growth of alcohol consumption among Finnish children. These officers are trying to remove a very inebriated woman from the back of the van. She is totally unable to help herself. Like many drunks, the odor coming from the woman is very strong. The drunk patrol in Finland is a very difficult duty indeed. Next. Police roll on a call where a drunken white male has vandalized a car owned by a black man. The report says the attack was racially motivated. While the native Finns usually live in harmony with their neighbors of all color, over the last 10 years, with the growth and immigration of non-whites, racism has seen a slight increase. The victim gives the officers a description of the drunken white male who smashed the car window and then ran off. Police find the man and begin to question him. He is obviously very intoxicated. The majority of all police calls in Finland are alcohol-related. Violence is often a part of these alcohol-involved incidents. As a precautionary measure, the suspect is searched before he is handcuffed. The black victim has arrived on the scene to identify the suspect. The suspect is incensed by the victim's presence, and he verbally abuses the victim. The police officers have the situation well in hand. They are well versed in techniques of handling aggressive drunks.
Chips. You know it. Hey, you know it.
The suspect is loaded into the police van and will be taken to a drunk shelter to sleep it off. In the morning, he will face assault and vandalism charges. At least 20,000 men a year are processed through the Helsinki drunk shelter. Officers wear protective gloves when processing drunks. This is a hygienic safety precaution aimed at the prevention of spreading infectious disease. Any object that could harm either the man or the officers is taken away from the suspect. As with many aggressive drunks, this man remains hostile during the whole process. The officers are impervious to his insults and complaints. They have seen this scene replayed many, many times before. When the effects of the alcohol wear off, this man will most likely be humble and cooperative. Although public intoxication is a common occurrence in Finland, no one can become a police officer if they have even once been convicted for drunkenness. The Finnish police force has very high standards for their officers. This man will be taken to his cell. He will spend the night on the hard concrete floor. Justice was served here today. Santiago, Chile. Police role.